Alright, we gotta talk about this Honkai Star Rail situation, because I mean, look at this list, dude! We got Finan right here coming in as a new DPS, but look at all these DPS characters moving down. It's like easier to actually track which characters didn't move down than it is which characters did. It's insane. The whole entire tier, it looks like a bomb went off over here, dude, for real. Like, even old characters getting buffed caused some movement as well, and a bunch of characters moved down. For example, these like sub DPS characters right here. So let's go ahead and talk about this, because we got power creep and we got reverse power creep. What the heck? All right, now everybody knows about this whole Finan situation, right? Everybody knows a little bit, at least, about him releasing and like obviously some of the movement. We'll talk about that in a sec, but I wanted to give credit where credit's due with these old character buffs that ended up coming out. And yeah, I thought it was just gonna be probably multipliers, and I was actually proven wrong that there are some major kit changes here. Maybe it's because of the backlash that they faced, and they knew they were going to get some ridicule if they didn't do anything big, so they actually decided to do something significant. Either way, doesn't matter. They did it, and that's like props to them in the end. Kafka, for example, is a really great example, because she ended up actually becoming more of a sub DPS DOT, like all the other DOTs have been, right? Every single DOT, technically to this point, has been a sub DPS, but she was the closest thing to a main DPS DOT character we had. Now she kind of reverts to a more sub DPS role, and she's a big enabler. She always kind of was, but she was more front loaded, and now she kind of fits more into the closest thing that I'd say we have to like a support DOT character up to this point. And bro, the redemption arc for Silverwolf, my god, look at this. They actually switched places with Pela. Like, this is crazy. Like, they actually just completely flipped places, right? For so long, it was like, why would you run Silverwolf? Why would you invest in this 5-star when you could just run Pela when she's better anyways, right? It was like that for so long, but now the tables have completely flipped, and look at Silverwolf over here in tier 0.5. Absolutely insane. The biggest jump we see out of any of the old character buffs. She used to be all the way down here in tier 2 before, below where Pela actually sits right now. So they didn't just like kind of switch, like she actually like propelled herself somehow and had a huge upswing coming up all the way to tier 0.5. The biggest upswing I've ever seen for any character, like as far as like movement on a tier list, probably in this game's entire lifespan. And of course, hold up. We got Blade over here, like actually doing something for once. I mean, bro moved up to tier 1 next to Acheron, because Acheron just dropped down. That is crazy. Now, the meta has sort of been shifting in a way that sort of helps the guy out a lot, but he just hasn't had the damage output to really make anything of it. In fact, he's been used more of a sub DPS because his damage has been so bad as a main, so he's been utilized kind of like Argenti has been, Jesus Christ, as more of a sub DPS unit rather than main. But now he's actually somewhat viable as a main DPS unit, which is kind of wild. I'd actually say he is viable now, because look at the units you'd see him next to. With Yun Li, with Fei Xiao, with Rappa, who just dropped down, with Acheron, nuts. Jesus Christ, I almost forgot about Jing Liu. Here we go. Okay, so Jing Liu, unfortunately, she did get the buff, but she still sits here at tier 1.5, and that's fine. She's still considered a meta character and everything like that, but she is considered toward the bottom of meta characters. And let's be honest here, in the modern era, most of us probably aren't trying to run these characters unless we have to in the modern era, because dude, when you have characters like Finan coming out, like acting like he's basically a boss, right? Like, he's the closest thing to like a boss style. He kind of like cheats the game. Like, he gets to make his own domain expansion, but it's not like an instance-based thing. He literally like steals everybody's turns and like pushes everybody else out on your team. It's insane. Now, I'm not necessarily saying he's like the best DPS in the game or anything like that, because of how it works, you kind of lose out on all the other damage and synergies you have with the rest of your team. So it's cool, but it's not necessarily the strongest thing. But, you know, like, it's gonna push some of these other characters that don't have these gimmicks and these other things down. And the power level of this game is just going up and up and up. HP scaling goes up and up and up. And even though these old characters got buffed, look at where they sit right? This is the best it's probably ever gonna be for them. Yeah, so Jingli, you kind of got the shaft there, because Kafka's gonna be relevant because she has a DOT character coming in the game that she's gonna actually support, right? So that's gonna make her, she's already tier 1 here. Without that, she's probably gonna come up to tier 0.5 at least, maybe potentially even tier 0 if they work endgame around DOT again for the first time in a very long time, right? You see Silverwolf already performing at 0.5. She doesn't really need anything to be relevant. She already became relevant again. That's crazy. On the same tier as the legendary Ron May, right? Jesus. Yeah, I think that's actually pretty cool that they're buffing these characters, because at least for a couple of patches or so, they'll be relevant again, right? And of course, in the process of making some of their older characters relevant again, they kind of made some of their other older characters irrelevant, or even more irrelevant than they were before. Like Pela, of course, switching places. Oh, you see even Fugue moving down finally. Not saying that she's bad. I'm just saying she's finally moving down. It's actually crazy. Zhao Cho moving down, obviously because of, Akron moving down. Fugue moving down, obviously because we have Firefly enjoyers. This isn't my fault, okay? Don't get mad at me this time. I know I talk some smack, but it's just happening, okay? And then, dude, Boot Hill moving down too. So the Firefly enjoyers and the Boot Hill enjoyers can actually hold hands for once instead of being at each other's throats over who's the best break character or whatever the heck you guys are arguing about all the time. You both got dropped, okay? You're both sitting on the bus next to each other in an ironic twist of fate. Jing Yuan getting dropped down because they needed to make room. It's crazy. They needed to make... Feinin is the only DPS that actually got added to the list. I want you guys to think about that for a sec. So let's talk about this DPS slot, okay? This actual power creep situation. What the heck? So Feinin comes out. Mighty gets dropped down to make room for him, right? You see the watch list tag on Anaxa actually to potentially bring him up, not down, in an interesting situation. Wild that he's actually that strong as a main DPS. I think a lot of us thought he was just mostly going to be a sub DPS. Then you end up seeing Akron getting moved down to make room for Mighty because they don't consider her to be as good as Mighty. Totally understandable. It's not her meta right now, per se. Then you end up seeing Rappa also getting dropped down because they consider it the same thing, not as good as Mighty, who has to make room for... They're if Mighty's going to be here and you don't consider these characters as good, then they just can't be on the same tier, so they move down, which moves more characters down. It's a domino effect. Boot Hill, Firefly, Jing Yuan, Clara, Dr. Ratio, haven't said their names in a while. Dan Hung and Bibiter Lune, I only say his name to complain about, the fact that he's not voiced in English. And no other DPSs got moved down because they're already on the bottom floor. But yeah, this is insane. Just one character coming out in the game did all of that because all of the other old character buffs didn't even affect the DPS slot, really. It was... except for Blade moving up, but he didn't affect anybody else. Really, him moving up didn't actually affect the tier list as far as DPS goes. It's just Feinin coming out and dropping everybody else down. It's crazy. And then, dude, you see Ling Shaw getting brought down. That's correct. What? That's crazy, man. Are you on the same tier as Gallagher? No offense, Gallagher's great. But I've always considered her to just be better. I'd say a tier better. But would you drop him down? I don't know. We might see a watch list tag get added to this guy now because of just one, sustainability character coming in and just being that good. Now, Huohuo is, Huohuo stay winning. New character comes out, solidifies her place here in tier 0 because of the energy buff that she can give to Feinin, the new fun toy that's out right now, and the meta's going to cater to him. So, of course, she's going to stay relevant here. So it's actually insane to see even Ling Shaw get dropped down. And I think we all know that finally one day, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, maybe a preservation character, whoa, God forbid, might actually come out sometime this year. We can't even say this year anymore. It's been over a year since the preservation came out. This century, at this point, we might get a new preservation character. And we all know when that happens, that's going to be some wild power creep too, and instantly going to be a tier 0. You don't need it to to question that whatsoever. We all know that's going to be the case because it takes over a year for a preservation character to be released in this game. So prepare for that moment as well. Gallagher, I'm sorry, bro. Enjoy your time in tier 0.5 while it lasts, bro. And we don't really need to talk about it, right? We already know that Cypher, Tribby, and Axa, super strong like sub DPS characters. They come out, they instantly become like the best and push everything else down. That already happened, but this sub DPS slot got really screwed up too, not just the main DPS slot, because I mean, you see these characters come out and they solidify themselves in as top tiers. Then you see these old characters get buffed that solidify themselves just below those top tiers. And so you see all these other characters move down. Dude, Serval had a huge come up recently and a big power spike because of the meta kind of like working really well for her, but it's not enough to keep her relevant up there, you know? March 7th getting brought down, of course, the meta just doesn't really necessarily like cater to her super duper well compared to everything else that's up there. And then bro, Mose, and then we don't even, oh geez. And dude, the situation has gotten so wild that like we're at a point now where if a character releases and they're kind of like mid or even potentially bad or something, like people are gonna probably freak out about that, which is kind of like, what do we want at this point, right? Because if characters are this strong, keep releasing this strong, we keep getting HP inflation and it's just a problem, right? But if characters release that aren't keeping up with the meta, then those characters are just considered bad. And it's almost like bad practice or like be a stupid idea to pull them. And what if those characters are a fan favorite? You're just not going to want to pull them because the meta just, it also changed to the point now where people stop necessarily pulling for characters they like. Look at Tribby, for example. How many of you just pulled Tribby because they're good? You didn't pull them because you like them. You just pulled them because they're good, right? Like, at least sometimes we pull characters because they're good and we like them. In this case, I think most people pulled them just because, like, they're good. That's it. Like, and some of us regretted not pulling them because they wanted to kind of stand on business and they're like, I don't like them, I'm not pulling them, right? And then they regret it later on and are just waiting around for their, like, rerun or whatever. Like, it's crazy. And so I think this situation is not getting fixed. Let's be honest, it's not. Like, but to alleviate the situation, it would be cool to see them put some interesting mechanics into the end game, or maybe just like slow down on the high power scaling of like literally everything that they release to slowly tone things down in a way that like is enjoyable for all people involved, including the devs as well as the players. Or they could just keep power creeping everything intensely and then end up giving us a bunch of free stuff like they did with the anniversary, and then like everybody becomes a little bit on a better playing field because of all the free stuff that everybody got, and now people aren't complaining as much if they're more casual because they did just get a bunch of free characters, and we do have that other free character that's coming to us pretty soon. So yeah, if they just keep giving us a bunch of free stuff, I think we'll probably be happy, right? Right?